You send a text and then you just wait. And the longer it takes them to reply, the more you start convincing yourself something's wrong. Like, maybe they're annoyed. Maybe you said something weird. You don't even know what you said, but you start going back through the conversation looking for it. And then they reply. Normal reply. And you spend the rest of the day trying to figure out what that tone was. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But I don't think it is. And the thing is, when you care this much, you genuinely don't think it's a problem. Because from the inside, it just feels like being a normal person. Like, everyone worries about what people think, right? Everyone gets a little anxious sometimes. Everyone replays stuff they said. But there's a difference between that and what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is when your brain is basically running a background check on every single interaction. Analyzing. Like, why did they say it like that? Why did they go quiet? What did that look forward? You can't just let it go. And the craziest part is, most people doing this have no idea they're doing it. They just think they're, I don't know, a thoughtful person. Or sensitive. They don't realize that what they're actually doing is handing over their whole sense of self to whoever they happen to be around that day. And it starts early. Like, really early. I think for most people it's somewhere around middle school. Maybe even before that. Because when you're a kid, fitting in doesn't just feel nice. It feels necessary. You notice which kids get left out and you don't want to be that kid. So you start adjusting. And adjusting works. That's the problem. You figure out that if you're a little more like whoever you're around, things go smoother. Less weird moments. More people seem to like you. So you keep doing it. And then by the time you're like 19, 20, 21, you've been doing this for so long that you've got a different version of yourself for basically every situation. One for your close friends. One for acquaintances. One for people you want to impress. You're switching between them without even thinking about it. And if someone asked you, like, actually stopped you and asked, what do you genuinely want? What's your actual opinion on this? You'd probably just kind of pause. Not because you don't have one, but because you've spent so long tracking what everyone else wants that somewhere along the way you stop keeping track of your own answer. And the exhausting part, the part that nobody on the outside sees, is that this doesn't turn off. Like it doesn't stop when the conversation ends or when you get home. You'll be hanging out with people, seeming totally fine, and inside you're just going through everything. That thing you said an hour ago, that look someone gave you, whether that joke landed or didn't. You can't just be in the room. You're always also watching yourself be in the room. And what makes it worse is that people who do this are usually pretty good at hiding it. So on the outside you seem fine, confident even, which means nobody ever really checks in. Because why would they? You seem okay. You're not okay. But you seem it. That's kind of the whole problem. I watched someone go through this pretty closely, and I think about it more than I probably should. This person, honestly one of the most adaptable people I've ever met. Like, genuinely. They could walk into any group and within maybe 10, 15 minutes seem like they'd been there the whole time. Different energy. Different references. Different version of themselves depending on who they were with. And at first I just thought, oh, that's just a social thing. Some people are like that. But then I started noticing that when it was just us, one-on-one, and I'd ask something simple, like, where do you want to eat? What do you want to do? They'd just go quiet. Not momentarily quiet. Actually unsure. Like the question didn't really compute without someone else's preferences to anchor to first. And then at some point they got left out of something. Group plans, like 12 or 13 people. And they just weren't in the chat. And they were devastated. Not just hurt. Actually devastated. Because in their head, they had done everything right. They'd never said no to anything. Never caused problems. Never pushed back on anyone. They'd basically made themselves as easy as possible to be around, and it still didn't work. And watching them try to figure out what they'd done wrong, when they hadn't done anything wrong, that's when I really got it. It wasn't just anxiety. It was years of energy put into a version of themselves that wasn't even real, and they were still losing. Here's the thing nobody really says out loud. Caring this much doesn't make people like you more. It just makes you easier to take for granted. Because when you're always available, always agreeable, always saying yes to everything, people stop seeing that as a personality. They start seeing it as just like, that's how you are. You become the reliable one, the low maintenance one, the one who never says no. And that sounds fine until you realize that your actual preferences, your limits, what you actually want, none of that is really in the conversation anymore. And the people you're stressing about impressing, genuinely, most of them are not paying that close attention. You're up at 2 a.m. analyzing a 3-word text. They forgot they sent it. You're performing for an audience that already went home. So what do you actually do? And I'm not going to give you like a 5-step thing because I don't think that's how this works. I think it comes down to getting honest about what question you're asking yourself. Because most of the time, the question running in the background is, what do they think of me right now? And everything you do is basically just an answer to that question. The shift, and it sounds simple but it's not, is learning to stop and ask, does this person's opinion of me actually affect my life in any real way? Like, actually, not in your head, in reality. And most of the time the answer is no. It's a classmate you barely know. A coworker you'll probably stop seeing in a year or two. Someone you met once. They're not your future. And even when the stakes are real, making yourself smaller to fit what you think they want, that's not a strategy. That's just fear. But polite. The other thing is just noticing what it costs you. Not in a dramatic way. Just every time you apologize for something that isn't your fault. Every time you backtrack on something you actually believed. Every time you say yes and you mean no. Those add up. And what they cause is you knowing who you actually are. That's not nothing. Anyway, I hope something in there was useful. Or at least felt familiar. And I think this is one of those things that a lot of people in their early 20s are dealing with, and nobody's really talking about it directly. If you're new here, subscribe. Genuinely appreciate it. And if something resonated or if there's something you want me to talk about next, just drop it in the comments. I read them. I'll see you guys soon.